welcome back. This is Crossbeats production. Now, this particular thing that I've created, it's not an actual beat, but it's a pre-interlude, which I'm guessing that if you're familiar with rap music or any other artist, for example, Dr. Dre, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, all of those, Warren G, I don't know, whoever you want to put it down to, Ice Cube, the beats that were, or the music that was back in the, the early 90s, 80s, even further from that, 2000s, I guess you could say. Pretty much what I discovered throughout that time is a lot of the albums had what they would call an interlude, or a pre-interlude, or something that just kind of breaks up from the music. They created a scene with it, and it gave you a lasting impression of the album. I remember listening to several different types of tracks and just hearing the pre-story to a track, or whatever it might have been at the start of the song, or throughout the song, or whatever they did with the track. So this actual video is just creating the idea of that pre-interlude or an intro to a track, so it kind of sets the scene and the mood and the ideas behind the actual music itself. So I want to show you guys what I did to create this atmospheric kind of pre-interlude or intro, I guess you could say, and how I went about it, and the mindset behind it. So I'll just play it out to you, and I'll show you what I did, and then I'll explain the reason behind it and what I've done to create it. So just let me play this for you now. All right, so basically, as you can see, there is another long track here, which at some stage, this is going to be the intro to this actual track, and this track's going to be released by Mr. G Reality. He's over in the States, USA, and he's going to have I guess it's kind of a chop up of all of his different songs on his album, and it's going to be set in sequence, so pretty much it gives you a taste and a vibe of his actual album itself. So the reason why we created this and what we did to create it, which hasn't been approved yet, but it's basically an idea that's set out there for the artist to respond to, and pretty much he will then come back to us and give us an idea of what he would like to do. But anyway, the idea behind it was to create a story, create a vision, and then give the whole story throughout the album and the pre-tracks, basically. So the whole thing that I set up here, which we've still got to discuss. So pretty much, as you heard, there's footsteps. It basically comes in. I give a riser effect, and throughout that, then I've got one of my own tracks which I've produced, which is called Crazy Trap. That's in the background, and it sounds like sounds in the distance. So I've tried to create like it sounds like you're outside of a nightclub, that kind of idea. And I've had that conversation here. So the conversations that you can like kind of hear, that when you're standing outside in the line at a nightclub, you'd hear those type of conversations, just like a lot of noise around you, like the crowds and that kind of stuff. And then I've got that riser effect, which I've got at the end here. Well, it's not a riser, but it's a fall. And that's pretty much to enter into the actual track itself. So pretty much what I did to create this effect, there's a couple of different things that I did. So just to start with, first off, this is set out like in a few different ways. So I'll just play the first part so you can understand the principle behind it. So first off, the footsteps I've got here, right? So I'll just show you, I've got a bit of loudness going on with, for example, this footstep track gets a little bit louder and louder and louder as you get going with it. So it sounds like for a start that you're you're walking from a distance. So I've used automation to kind of create the sound where it's getting closer and closer, because obviously as sound gets closer, it gets louder, and that's the footsteps. So I'll just play that out to you and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so what I did there, and as you can hear at the start, the footsteps, they sound like they're kind of in the center. So the center image, kind of not really around you. But then I've created an effect where they're spread out, so they're in the distance around you, and it sounds like you're kind of in the footsteps and you're a part of that scene. That's one effect that I use to kind of create that scene. And at the end, as you can hear, the footsteps stop. And usually when you stop, you step twice, because you step 1, 2, and that's kind of the way I've used this. So the way I did it, all I did was chop up the most, I guess, noisiest section of the footstep, and I just made 2 sections of it stopping 1, 2. That's pretty much that. But to create the actual scene of that, the ambience that the footsteps have, I've used one of 2 things, actually 3 things. So I've compressed the footsteps to give it a bit of loudness and fullness to the sound, so it brings up the footsteps, the volume a bit louder. I put a bit of distortion on it so it sounds a bit more gritty. But the main thing that I did was I limited the sound, so I brought that sound right up loud so it sounds clear and crisp and up front. As you can hear, it sounds pretty clear, and as you can see here, the loudness is quite loud. It's not clipping or anything, but it's definitely quite loud. So when you can see this part here, it gets to a section midway through where this H delay, as you can see here how I've got it set up. So this H delay is quite a good delay plugin. I must say, I actually got it pretty cheap. I think it was like $40-something through the Waves deal that they had a while back. It was maybe a couple of weeks ago actually. So this sometimes is on special from Waves. If you see it on special, it's probably a good idea to grab it if you do have it. There are other delay plugins, most definitely. There are some on Logic if you're using Logic. So sorry, let's go back in there. So there's definitely like a sample delay or a delay designer. This delay designer is quite good for the Logic one. It does take a bit of getting used to and a learning curve to use it, but once you know how to use it, it actually is quite a good delay plugin. But anyway, let's get back to what I did with this H delay. So I've actually automated the H delay so it steps in as a ping pong delay, so this button here, and I automated it at this section here, so it turns it on right at this point, and you'll hear the difference in the effect when I play it. So as you can hear, it does sound like it's around you rather than directly in front of you. So that just creates a bit of ambience, which I found very helpful in creating this actual whole scene mood setting intro that I created. Now the next thing that I did, and as you can see, pretty much everything is automated because, you know, when you're setting movie or cinema kind of stuff, you want to automate things to make them sound in the right place at the right time, the loudness, all that sort of stuff. So in total, this didn't really take me that long to create, but maybe an hour or 2. I'm not too sure exactly. I can't remember, but I created it last night, and it didn't take really that long. But anyway, so a couple of sounds that I've used, which I found within Logic, some of these, and some of these I've found just shuffling around in the samples that I have. So this other sample that I've got, excuse me. So basically it sounds kind of like a heartbeat, I guess. But I've automated that. I'll play it to you now. So it sounds like a tension. Like if you're familiar with any kind of movie, when you hear like a heartbeat, it usually resembles some kind of tension because somebody's either fretting or they feel like they're in trouble or they're panicking or whatever it is. So, you know, that type of thing always creates kind of a tension mood, and especially the fact that I've automated it. As you can see here, the sound creates a loudness from nothing to loud. And then I've got white noise, which, as you can tell, just gives that riser effect. Wait, let's go to the actual white noise. Okay, So that white noise that I've got, that just creates that riser effect into the scene, and then it becomes ambient. Now, one effect that I kind of was looking for a lot when I first started this whole idea was, how do you create a sound that sounds like you're outside or behind a wall, or that, you know, that the actual that sound that you get when you're standing outside of a nightclub without physically having to go there and record that sound. So I figured that I had used an EQ like that before to create that sound, but I just kind of wanted to get the real kind of authentic sound. So what I did was, first off, as you can see, I've got this EQ here. It's pretty drastic EQ. So the EQ is pretty much just EQ'd out all of the top end. And as you're aware, if you have a lot of top end, that kind of brings the sound closer to you, or louder, I guess, perceived louder anyway, to your ear. So what I figured was, if I EQ the sound out, really take off the top end pretty much all the way till about 300 or so hertz. I think it's 375 to be precise. And then I increased some of the mid frequencies and the low end frequencies, well, the lower mids and definitely low end. So I'll just give you a demo of the actual track. So this track is one of my tracks I've produced earlier, and I figured this song sort of set a nightclub kind of scene, and it worked out well. So let me just play that to you now. Okay, so that's the track, basically. I think there was some reverb going on there from this lobby conversation. Yeah, there was, because it's basically got a bus channel sent from bus 2. Anyway, so just ignore the fact that you can hear those voices, because I'll play those separately and you'll be able to hear it. But you get the idea. Pretty much, I just took out some of the top end. I'll just take off the EQ when I'm playing it, and you'll just be able to hear what I'm talking about. So let me just modulate the EQ so you can hear that, and we'll go from there. See, as you can hear, when it's got the top end, it definitely sounds like it's in your face, and it's a lot louder, and you can hear the clarity of the track. But when you remove that top end out, it definitely creates that vibe that there's something blocking in between you and the actual track. So it might be a wall or whatever it is. So that was the idea, to create that authentic kind of outside the nightclub sound, and that's how I went about doing that. Now, all I did here was I just limited the track just to take off some dBs, so 1 and a bit dB, so it didn't clip, because, you know, as you can see, I do adjust the actual loudness of that, so I just wanted to make sure it's not going to clip. And I put some reverb on it, probably one of my more favorite reverbs. So this reverb has got a wet and dry dial, so I put that at about 30%, just so I could get some reverb, but also let through some of the real sound. And again, with the H delay ping pong, I then set this to ping pong as well, and I put that at 1/64th, and the feedback at this level, as you can see, so 29. That's pretty much all I did with that, just to create that width and that sound that I got from the original Walking with the Footsteps. And then the next thing I did was, which you can already kind of hear in this other part, but I'll just play it to you now. So this is the actual crowd that I got. It's a sample, basically just a crowd, ambient sort of crowd sound. Okay, enough of that. So basically, as you can see, there's some modulated here sound. The volume increases just a bit. I automated that because I realized there was a bit of a cough there, and I figured, you know what, that sounds more real if it's closer to you, or if somebody walked past and they coughed at you or they coughed around you, you could kind of hear that as they were walking past. That was the idea behind that. So I figured, you know, I'll modulate the automation every once in a while just to make it sound like there's things happening, but it's not just a stagnant kind of sound. So if you're creating any kind of music, for example, you can use automation to your favor to create realness in certain parts of the track, or bring that closer, or with a vocal you want to bring that closer to you, or you want to take it away, or whatever you want to do with it. Definitely automation is your friend in that area. So, you know, as you can see, it's quite simple, but there's just little techniques that you can use to create little effects and just bring some life to your track. Now, as you can see, this final thing here, which is basically just my riser effect in reverse. And let me just, hang on. There we go. So that's my riser effect in reverse, and excuse me. So that riser effect I used just to finish off the track, and I figured that because the riser is quite loud at the start, so I just reduced the volume and then increased it as it went quieter, and just sustained that real lengthy sustain that it has. Just give me a sec. Okay, so that riser effect, I'll just play that to you so you can hear it. Okay, so it's so simple. That's all it was. It was just the riser, which I used here, send it in reverse, and then put some automation on it to make it come alive. So basically that's that. I mean, it's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to it, but you can create for your own rap albums, whatever album it might be. It doesn't have to be rap. It can be anything. You can create your own, I guess, you know, intros or interludes or whatever you want to have. And just, you know, make it creative. And over this, you could create some kind of conversation piece or something that happens in the scene or whatever it is. And it just gives that dynamic feel, and it gives you a story, and it gives you effect and everything that you want to bring to the track and give it life. That's pretty much what an intro is. It just brings emotion into the track, and then the track finishes that off. It's just a really authentic, I guess, way of doing it. And if you listen back to a lot of the hip-hop back in the past, and even now in 2016, there is some hip-hop that has that sort of stuff. But I feel like a lot of that stuff, from my experience anyway, was back when I was growing up and listening to hip-hop, that you'd get a lot of that stuff happening in the old school hip-hop. And they really... I would say that the most memorable things to me in hip-hop was the stories behind what was happening in the song. So I hope I hope this helps out, and if it does, just remember to give that thumbs up and that like, and also hit that subscribe button, because it really helps the channel out. And all I can say is thanks for that, and peace!